that the state is projecting $54 billion deficit, and the state is also projecting $18.3 billion in reduced funds for public education. And so one mechanism to achieve a reduction in school funding would be to make a cut to education. The other mechanism, which is much more popular from the state, is to defer the money. And so a deferral means that the level of funding does not decrease. We as school district, we just don't see that money until a later time. And this allows the state to wait longer to pay us. And by waiting longer, they can book that money into their next fiscal year. So we anticipate seeing deferrals not just for next year, but we may actually see cash deferrals for our current year funding, because the state has collected so much less money from their tax revenues. And so the question is, why do we anticipate the state using deferrals, and why do we anticipate the governor using this as a mechanism? And so if we look at the last economic downturn, the state deferred payments to achieve Prop 98 savings. Prop 98 is the school funding. And so for 4 years, about 42% of K-12 Prop 98 funding was given to schools through deferrals, through deferred payments. And so by relying on the deferrals, the state actually achieved one-time savings. And it creates quite a bit of challenges for schools, which I'll speak to in a minute. So deferrals versus budget reductions. As you can see in this chart.
Wait, can everyone see his chart? Because I can't. We can't see your chart.
No,
oh, no.
You need to share the screen.
He said he was sharing it, but
You can't see that, huh?
No.
Oh boy. Okay.
It's okay. It's all right. I'm just saying, I just want to make sure you know we didn't see it.
Can you see any of these slides?
No.
We saw the first set of slides that you
Right.
did, so that whatever you did there was good.
Huh. Okay.
Aha. There you go. We did it now.
All right.
Can you see this slide here?
Yes.
With the
Yes.
chart?
The deferrals versus budget reductions. Yes.
Okay, let me just do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you can see here, deferrals versus budget reductions. Since 2001 through 2011-12, the light blue shows what the deferral was. So the actual funding to schools was the total amount, the darker blue plus the lighter blue. But what you could see is the state began to defer a lot of the money given to schools to future fiscal years. And so that's a great example of that. Here's another slide that shows it from 2009 to 2012. What you can see here is huge deferral amounts going to schools. Now, funding, it wasn't just deferrals, as you can tell, between 9-10 and 10-11, you see a decrease in funding, total funding, right? And you see another decrease in total funding. But so what we expect to see from the governor is a combination of a reduction or cuts to funding and deferrals. What we're not going to see is $18 billion of cut.
They pick up her water too because she was drinking her water. I know.
So here's another chart. This is how it looks on a monthly basis, and this is why it's very challenging for school districts, because these deferrals, we get regular payments from the state of California so we can make our payroll. And so what happens during deferrals is we don't get our money until much later in the year. Therefore, we have to, as school district, borrow money and pay interest on loans to be able to make payroll. And so and the interest you pay on a loan, which is called a tax revenue anticipation note or a trans, is a general fund expense. So we have to use general fund money to pay interest on loans to carry us through the year until such a time that the state pays us our money through the deferral. And deferrals will always carry from one fiscal year to the next. So an advantage of a deferral is the state usually realizes a one-year savings without reducing funding, without cutting us. They just say, we'll pay you later. and they can book it in the next fiscal year. And so for schools, we can avoid, in many cases, reductions that we would otherwise have to make if it was an actual cut in funding. There are many disadvantages as well, and these are just some of them. School districts are operating under the assumption that we are going to get this money. And so we will run programs that we anticipate being able to afford, but if the state down the road turns those deferrals into reductions, then we're in trouble. So that's the real issue. And then, as I spoke, it's huge cash flow burden on school districts to borrow money to make payroll when the state defers funding. So given that, we anticipate seeing deferrals as a major part of the budget picture moving forward. So what is on the table? We don't know yet. We need to wait for tomorrow. The next step after tomorrow is to build whatever the governor's projected funding is into our budgets. And on May 27th, we will come to the board with what we think is a reasonable assumption of what our deficit next year will be. Then, as a school board, as a district, we're going to have to put options on the table to address that deficit. So with that, do you have any questions?
Alex, can I just ask a quick one? Is there a ballpark dollar amount that we're talking about in terms of the interest on these trans?
It's very low interest, but it's money that I've always argued the state should have to reimburse, and they don't. And so for, I think, every million out of the general fund, we're having to pay between $15,000 and $20,000 to borrow.
Okay. So it's a teacher salary, fair enough, right? For a couple $1 million.
Yeah, it adds up.
All right.
I do remember this conversation from the last recession, unfortunately. Rick or Matt, do you have any questions? We are going to discuss this more on item, I think P4 tonight. But anyway, he wanted to make sure everyone could hear this time.
Yes, Linda asked the question I was wondering. So thanks, Linda.
Okay, Megan or Rick. Otherwise, we can move on.
Okay, so that concludes my report at this time, and I'll speak a little bit about the Department of Finance later.
Okay. Well, that was a very thorough report, very long. Thank you. Very good. I think these meetings are going to be like this from here on out. We got a lot going on. Okay, so let's move on to O, report of board members serving on the Budget Advisory Committee, and that would be board members Phillips and Reed. I don't know if either of you, which of you guys had spoken of, who wanted to speak now? Both?
It's all Rick.
It's all Rick?
I'm happy to speak. So one of the things that the Budget Advisory Committee is going to be helping to do is actually address the fiscal challenge, which is, as Alex pointed out, potentially going to be very real. And how much has to be cut versus deferrals, not nearly as bad, even though it does cost us the interest on the TRAN. The TRAN's interest rate is relatively low, but the cuts are real. So they have revived the spreadsheet from that was developed last year in terms of both ideas to cut from the budget and potentially raise revenues. And after the May revise comes out, the next formal meeting of the Budget Advisory Group in June will address that. Between now and then, though, they've continued to work on a district reserve policy. The whole direction of the reserve policy was, where should we build our reserves to and cap it, at least on an aspirational level? And things switched on a dime. And so now the language of the reserve policy is much more around a minimum and a maximum level. And there's a subcommittee of the BAC working on that, consisting of the co-chairs and David Eaton. There's going to be a special meeting of the BAC next Monday to try and adopt a policy to put forth to the board at the next board meeting. So we wanted to have a placeholder in the agenda when you do board agenda planning next week for the BAC's proposed reserve policy to come back at the meeting on the 27th.
Okay. And
Alex joined us actually for this last BAC meeting as well.
Beth Meyerhoff had emailed regarding maybe having the BAC look at a mechanism to kind of look at different kinds of fundraising, or maybe coordinate fundraising, or look at it maybe in a different manner. I'm not sure if it would fit under the BAC, but maybe I can forward that to you guys, and you guys can take that to the BAC and see what they say.
Sure. So I've had some conversations offline with PEF, and I've talked with Alex about this, but with this impending fiscal crisis, a big part of us managing through it in the GFR times of 09, 010 was actually with the support of our community and their generosity. And I think that same kind of in this together, total community effort is going to be required for us to manage effectively through that. I just don't know that the BAC is the right vehicle, although it does have, stakeholders from, most of the fundraising groups, like the booster clubs, PEF, and PTA. But potentially that should be separate. I mean, I think Alex should think about that as well. But I do think that that's an important component of solving the problem.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, no, our parents pulling together to help us figure this out is always the way to go. All right. Well, thank you. Then Linda, you didn't have anything to add? No. Okay. All right. So now we will move on to P, discussion action part of the meeting. I did think it made sense to offer a 5-minute break if you guys all want to take 5 minutes to do whatever you might want to do. Some people are asking me after the last meeting how we could possibly meet for so many hours in a row. But I will, if you want to take a break, we can take a break now. We can keep on going. No one seems to be dying to take a break. Okay, let's keep going. So then let's go to resolution number 11, and that is California Day of the Teacher. So that's Dr. Horvath who will talk to us about this.
Thank you, President Seymour. Can everybody hear me? It's been a while. Gives me great honor to read this resolution. I'm thankful that for the next few moments, we can all stop throwing shade at teachers and thank them for doing what many people don't have the ability nor the courage to do what they do on a daily basis. So I'm very proud to read this for resolution number 11, California Day of the Teacher. Whereas excellence in our district begins with our teachers, and whereas Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District teachers are among the best educated, highly qualified, and hardest working educators in the state, and whereas today's teachers mold the minds and train the workforce of the future, and whereas good teaching grows in value and pays dividends far beyond the classroom, and whereas an educated citizenry serves as the foundation of our democracy, and whereas the theme of the 2020 California Day of the Teacher is California Teachers, Inspiring Generations. And whereas no other profession touches as many people with such a lasting effect, and whereas the Board of Education values and appreciates the dedication of its teaching staff, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District joins the California Teachers Association and state legislature in declaring today, Wednesday, May 13th, 2020, as the California Day of the Teacher, and urges all citizens to observe this day by taking time to remember and honor those who give the gift of knowledge through teaching.
Thank you. So can I get a motion for that resolution?
Sure. Also, I move that the Board of Education adopt resolution number 11-2019/20 designating May 13th, 2020 as California Day of the Teacher in the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Linda, okay. All right. So comments before we vote. I think we all will agree that our teachers are very special to all of us. I was happy that I was able to, encourage a lot of people last meeting to write to their teachers and thank them, since this year we didn't get to do teacher appreciation like we have in the past. But I do read a lot of the emails that we get, from all of our principals. And it sounds like lots of our PTAs did a lot of great things for our teachers, including giving them meals and that kind of thing. So that was awesome. I didn't know if anybody else wanted to say anything on this before we vote.
So even though I was a little rough on CC, I do appreciate the value of all our teachers. And, as CC says, a tremendous number of them are doing absolutely outstanding work. And we all need to appreciate their efforts, and we're all having a tough time in dealing with all. And we also all have our roles to play. And it's the teachers in the U.S. Teachers are underappreciated as a profession. And, that unfortunately, that's not something that we're going to be able to solve on a local level in terms of the funds, but I do appreciate them. And I do think that teachers as a profession overall are just underappreciated and undervalued in our society today.
I agree. Then Linda or Megan, anyone? Megan, we thank you.
Oh, thanks. I would say that it's perfect that we're here on this day. Especially it's weird being at home and not being at school during a normal school day. And happy late Teacher Appreciation Week, which was last week, to all of the teachers. And keep up the great work that you're doing. And CC and Suzanne stated, like, we are all in this together. So it's important that we continue working together for the kids. So thank you for all that you do in our district, and keep doing that. Thank you.
I too would like to thank our teachers. I get to go to, see all kinds of cool instruction, and I've had the opportunity to speak at all of our staff meetings over the last few weeks. So I know the great work you're doing, and so keep it up. And we're almost there. We're almost to the finish line.
Yep, we're getting there. Okay. So with that, all votes, like I said, I'll be by roll call. So let's go through the roll call vote. Board Member Phillips.
Aye.
Crawford.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Brock.
Aye.
Suzanne, me, yes. Okay, that's a 5-0 vote. Very good. Thank you, teachers. And now on to P2.
So thank you, President Seymour. So resolution P2 is resolution number 12, 2019-20. Classified School Employee Week. I always joke that teachers get a day, classified school employees get an entire week to recognize them. So this resolution, again, proud to be able to read it tonight to recognize our classified staff and thank Joan for her comments earlier. So it's a pleasure to work with her. Whereas classified professionals provide valuable service to the schools and students of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District, and whereas classified professionals contribute to the establishment, promotion of a positive instructional environment, and whereas classified professionals serve a vital role in providing for the welfare and safety of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District's students, and whereas the theme of the 2020 Classified School Employee Week is Classified School Employees 2020 Vision on Our Schools, and whereas classified professionals employed by the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District strive for excellence in all areas relative to the educational community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District joins the California School Employees Association, the state legislature, in declaring the week of May 17th through May 23rd, 2020 as Classified School Employee Week, and recognizes and wishes to honor the contribution of the classified professionals to quality education in the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District.
Thank you. So let's get a first and a second on this one.
So I move that the board pass resolution number 12, 2019-20 to designate May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as Classified School Employee Week.
Great. And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And before we vote, do we have any comments? Obviously, we know that we could not live without our classified staff. They are amazing. And I get to go to the farmer's market most Sundays, and I see the person from Community Services at Penn a lot, doing all kinds of things to keep us able to buy fresh fruit and vegetables. So anybody else have anything to say before we vote?
I just want to thank our folks. Many of them have been on our campuses this entire time. And so they're still working, and so we really appreciate everything they're doing. And also to Joan's point today, we will be putting together clear protocols for when people do come back to pick up their stuff. So
Okay.
I do appreciate her bringing that up as well.
Great. Okay, then as a roll call vote, Board Member Phillips
Aye.
and Crawford,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brock,
Aye.
Seymour, aye. That would pass 5-0. Okay, moving right along. Thank you. All right, P3, and this is on the approval of emergency resolution 13 for 2019-20 to modify the grading policy due to the COVID crisis. So we had a lot of public comment on this last meeting. We have a few public comments on this now. We do have, I think, 4 or 5 written comments that Board Member Crawford will read, and then we can also let Tisha Barton back in to make her comment on grading. So Trent, if Trisha's ready, we can start with her. Otherwise, if you want to have a minute, I can have Megan read the comments. And just so everyone knows, you get 3 minutes. Normally, we're in a meeting room, and Jenna makes sure we don't go over 3 minutes. I am keeping track the best I can, if I don't forget, to write down people start talking. So just be aware that I'm going to try to, if anyone goes long, I'm going to try to wrap it up at 3 minutes.
Ms. Barton
Okay.
has joined.
She's here. Okay, perfect. All right, then, Ms. Barton, when you're ready, we are ready. And you have to unmute yourself, or Trent has to unmute you.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. All right. So I had sent an email out to everybody regarding the concerns about the grading policy. And I just wanted to make it for the record. And the email I sent was anecdotal and from my experience. I've been teaching for 20 plus years, 20 of them in this district. And in the years that I've been teaching, I've been predominantly an AP teacher, but the last several years, I've had regular classes as well. And I have seniors predominantly. So last week we were in a meeting, a department meeting, and district was present as well. And we were talking about the proposed recommendations. And it was made clear to us that there was a possibility of no Fs being allowed. And this brings great concern. And so I'm going to paraphrase the email I sent to board members as well as to Dr. Turnus. I'm not the one that issues Fs lightly. In fact, in my tenure of teaching, I think I might have issued maybe 5 Fs in my career. I would never issue an F to a student who's struggling due to events out of his or her control, such as the COVID-19, as it relates to the variety of hurdles, whether the family is directly impacted, economic hardship, or the student is now working to family business and juggling schoolwork, illness, etc. But the student who dropped the ball before COVID-19 and during COVID-19, so that same student who has continued the same behavior for no valid reason other than senioritis or now school doesn't count because we are in this virtual world, should not be shielded by a no F policy. Once again, that means that there are non-consequences for poor choices. Currently, I have students who've done that. And I've been in touch with their parents. I've been in touch with their counselors, and I've had conversations with that student who has dropped the ball. So it comes down to communication. And as I've spoke to my colleagues about this, we are all in agreement that we have an obligation under this situation to be communicating with our students and with our parents and knowing the narrative behind our situations. My students who are dropping the ball, I have checked and ensured that they've had access to technology, that they've had access to the different platforms that we're utilizing. And I've used old-fashioned pick up the phone and talk to parents and kids and so forth. And I know my colleagues have been doing the same thing. So if a student has dropped the ball from the beginning, they would have done this regardless of this situation. So I think they are the anomaly. They are not the rule. The majority of our students in this district at the high school level pass high school, and they may be pushing it to the limit. But the child who's dropped the ball, I don't think we need to cater to those. I think we need to be very, very aware of this. Okay, I have a student who's dealing with the whole COVID thing, has missed the majority of my Zoom classes, but has been communicating and has been very upfront with the struggles. I am not going to fail that child, by no means. And my colleagues know this as well about themselves. So I think we need to give teachers the benefit of the doubt that they will do right. But by making the failing student, not because of COVID, not because of mental health issues being brought on by COVID, but because they have made a choice to not be responsible and not to meet the everybody in the middle, including their parents, should not be screened by this. So I noticed in the policy that, or the resolution, that you have a no credit component. Well, no credit and F, they're one and the same. So I think the teachers would be fine with either or. Now, would a D make a difference for giving a D to this kid who has an F? The answer is no, but that's not the point. We have an obligation as educators, as parents, as the adults in the room, to teach our young people that there are consequences for their choices. And if we are constantly coveting them, coddling them, when are they going to learn it? I learned it at a hard time. I learned it when I was in law school. I wish I had a teacher in high school.
Ms. Barton, I got to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I just want you to be conscientious of that. My last thing on the policy where it says number 5, the resolution is an emergency measure and will remain in effect until repealed. I would recommend that you put an expiration date for renewal instead of keeping it permanent. Because oftentimes with policy, if we keep it that way, we don't return to it, and then it becomes permanent. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Megan, can I get you to read the public comment that we received in writing?
Yes, and I think I have 4 here, so I'll just.
Yeah.
Were
4.
there other people waiting to talk, or?
Let me check. I don't think so. Nope.
No, I don't have anybody else in the waiting
Okay.
room.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay. So this comment is from Jeannie Hahn. Dear board members, the recommendation of choosing June 5th date for selecting a grade option is too soon for parents and students. Students should be allowed to choose their grading option after final grades are posted. We do not know if economic or personal hardships are affecting academics for students. What difference does it make between a June 5th or a later date for choosing a grade option for the school district? It's the same paperwork that needs to be filled out, except for the seniors who might need their grades sooner for colleges. A later date for choosing a grade option until final grades are posted allows students and families to make an informed decision. The June 5th date is asking parents to predict their children's grade. Right now, the only thing we know for sure is our world is unpredictable. The grading policy should be pass or fail or grades only. Putting CR or credit on a transcript will only hurt a child's academic record. Colleges will know what a CR represents. The truth is online learning is not for every child, and personal circumstances can have a great impact on a child's grade. I feel that it is best to have a simple grade policy and not to make it more complicated with a CR or credit. PVPSD is known for being a high-achieving school district. During this uncertain time, let our district be also known as a kind and compassionate school district too. Dr. Turnus uses the motto, putting kids first. Not teachers, not administrators, not board members, but kids first. Let's have a compassionate grading policy that lives up to Dr. Turnus's motto. Thank you.
Okay, that's the first one.
This next one is from Anonymous. I just wanted to say I've spoken to many people as well as seen a poll where more than 500 people want the grading system changed. I'm just curious why it won't be changed, because is it not supposed to be the students first? Also, why do we have grades during this time? I myself, as a high school student who normally has all A's, is struggling. When everyone is struggling and stressed out, all you care about is a learning loss. Just end school and start next year as normal. If you guys do not realize this, then it's extremely selfish. Think about the kids' mental health and physical health, please. You guys only care about amounts. Everything is just a number to you guys. You guys judge us by our grades and assume we are all stupid. Grow up, stop being selfish, and stop trying to turn school into a business. Anyways, I know this is harsh, but this is how I feel. I am sure many people feel this way as well. Also, the idea of starting school up before this outbreak is over is also absurd. Extremely, extremely selfish. Please consider this. If you ignore this, then you are only proving my point, which would then mean you truly do not have sympathy for the future, nor the future of the world. This is from Luke Wells. I disagree with this new proposed grading plan because I do not think that it will make the current situation for students any better, and our grades can potentially only continue to go down. For college-bound kids, dropping from an A to a B makes a momentous difference. So a 2-grade drop, example A to C, doesn't alleviate that pressure at all. This policy is supposed to help our grades and make it look better when applying to college, but is only going to end up assisting kids with poor grades who already look bad to colleges with or without this policy. There is not one student that I know whose grades haven't dropped at least one letter grade in at least one class since the online schooling started. Online schooling has made it incredibly hard for students to learn, and it is a fact that grades are going down for kids because of this. That is why this policy will offer little to no help towards students right now, and why we need a different policy, such as the no harm policy, which many other schools have already chosen, so that our grades can at least be set at the same level where they were on March 13th. And sure, some kids will lose motivation to do any more schoolwork if the no harm policy is chosen, but it will help the kids that actually want to learn and are still trying their hardest, but only getting worse and worse grades as online school continues. Most of the kids that would stop doing work have already stopped doing any work anyways. This proposed PVPUSD policy would only put us students at a disadvantage compared to other school districts that have no harm, because while those other students will be able to maintain A's with their no harm policy, we will have this policy that will allow our grades to keep dropping below that as far down as to C's, and gives us no support or help to protect our grades from dropping. The work since online school has been far more difficult and even at times more immense to date, which is why it is so important to have a different policy than you've proposed, which can help our struggling PVPUSD students get into a good college and succeed in life. As a sophomore, this is one of the most important semesters of my entire life. My 4.0 as of March 13th is deteriorating, and my grades are dropping every week, no matter how hard I work, which is why I am begging you to please reconsider your decision on which policy to vote. I am asking you to choose something else, like the no harm policy, so I can prosper during this pandemic and one day get into the college I deserve to go to, as the choices made now possibly affect the rest of my life. Thank you for your consideration. And then I have one more. This is from concerned RPV parents. We have two daughters in the PV schools in 10th grade and 6th grade. They are both strong students in many honors and or advanced grade level classes. This situation has been extremely stressful and unproductive, and we are very concerned about it creating a significant emotional and mental harm to them. Though I am certain that many teachers are working extremely hard, they are also not teaching in any normal sense of the word. There are Zoom sessions in some, but not all classes, but the interaction is not the same as in the classroom. Zoom is primarily a broadcast medium with limited feedback and interaction. Our 10th grader has to navigate 7 different platforms just to keep on top of her work and assignments. Aries, Zoom, Teams, Edleo, Edmodo, Turnitin, and email. Some teachers are organized and have their assignments summarized in the assignments tab in Teams. Others aren't. And so assignments have to be found by scrolling through posts and links on multiple pages and making sure to find the most recent post because assignments often change. In the last board meeting, we heard repeatedly that there were students, quote, working hard to get A's and that their hard work needed to be rewarded. But the reality is that different students have different learning styles, and there are many students working extremely hard and yet suffering. Our daughters are working literally 7 days a week and cannot keep up. This is not for a lack of effort or intelligence. It's simply a mismatch to the current situation. Keep in mind that an assignment often involves researching the topic first, since it has not been taught to them by a teacher trained in the subject. From talking to other parents, it is our belief that a majority of students are struggling. Our daughters are both suffering from panic attacks, and we know of other parents in the same situation. After the action at the last board meeting, we observed that multiple teachers suddenly stepped up the amount of homework assigned and made announcements about not accepting late work. And yet some of those same teachers are not even posting grades in Aries or providing any feedback on the submitted work. We do not understand why the district is following the path of potentially allowing a 2-letter grade drop. We understand there may be a pass/fail option offered, but our daughters are very resistant to that path. But we hope that the board understands that the uncertainty and the possibility of an A student suddenly struggling to get to a C is imposing unreasonably high stress levels on students. This does not align with the mission of the schools. It prioritizes a false academic rigor over the health and well-being of the students. The fear that students would then stop working is misplaced. Any such situation is in the control of parents. Meanwhile, the current policy sends a very clear message that the emotional and mental well-being of students must take a backseat to a desire to reward those who are lucky enough to be able to handle the homeschooling/self-learning situation. The best thing to do would be to implement a do no harm policy, at least at the high school level, with a pass or fail option for middle school level. We sincerely hope that you consider the well-being of all the students and reconsider your decision.
Okay, thanks, Megan. All right, so we will start this conversation. I do think it makes sense to say that we have received a lot of emails. We received a lot of input from the last meeting. I know all of us have read everything. And sometimes people feel like they provide input and then maybe the discussion or the decision doesn't go the way they think that it should. And they think that that their opinion was discounted. And that's not accurate, right? We all make decisions and we listen to all different points of view. And if we don't come up with a decision that somebody thinks is what they thought we should do, doesn't mean we discounted their opinion. It just means we decided on different factors and came to different kinds of resolutions. So I felt the need to say that because we've received many emails that we are, kind of ignoring these different viewpoints, and, we're not. So now I'm not sure how we want to start this conversation with everybody. It seems like at the last meeting, we decided that the idea of the March 13th grade point that students had the grade that day, that the do no harm grading, that we kind of decided that wasn't an approach we wanted to take based upon comments that we were making. We didn't actually make a hard, fast vote or a rule on that. So so in my opinion, if we wanted to go back and add that in, we can. I personally, I did ask Dr. Gotanda about the number of students getting Fs. So this has bothered me a lot. I didn't truly understand or know what number of students in middle school and high school will be getting Fs. I decided to eliminate middle school, not go there at all. But because if you receive an F in middle school, you still go on to the next class. But in high school, it has a different meaning if you do not pass a class. So I can share with you some of the numbers that she shared with me. They're pretty horrifying, to be honest with you. So Dr. Gotanda, I don't know if you want to share them. I want to. The number that I think is important today is the number of, I think it's important to mention the number of students we had getting Fs in one class per class, right? March 13th versus where we are today, because it's getting much worse. So do you want to address that, or do you want me just to do it? Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to share. So, in looking at our data, March 13th, between our two high schools, we had 627 Fs. So that is not students, but those are Fs. So those are actually, could be students who have multiple Fs. And then our interim grading period just ended, and we have 879 total between the two high schools. So that number has increased about 250.
Hey, Lindsay, are you able to tell us how many of those are seniors versus grades 9 through 11?
I can. If you give me a second, I can filter my data.
Thanks.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, yeah, you told me it was a very small increase, but you didn't give me a number. I only asked her for this today, which is why you guys don't have it, because the more I thought about this, I really wanted to get a number around this issue with the Fs. So I appreciate that she was able to figure this out pretty quickly for us.
And so anecdotally, for those, the administrators, Lindsay and Matt and Alex, how many students do we, how many F grades do we annually issue? What is has been the district norm for F grades in high school in past years that were non-COVID?
So I don't have the exact number per grade. I can say at this time last year for the interim period, we had 627 as of last year versus 879 this year.
Okay, okay. Well, both numbers are distressing. Both are normal level and where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And we may want to discuss that separately at a different time as opposed to the emergency issue.
Lindsay, are we sure all the grades are entered at the time of the interim? With COVID, students might have work that's still outstanding that hasn't been turned in yet, but will be turned in later. So how were the interim grades actually calculated? You're muted.
These were entered by teachers, so it is possible that they are taking late work and that grades can go up, but these were entered by teachers at this point of the semester.
Right, but I think you get where I'm going, is that a student might have a couple assignments outstanding that they're going to complete within a time frame, but they're still at this exact moment bringing their grade to an F.
Correct.
But at this point, every teacher doesn't accept late work.
Which I thought was part of compassionate grading. I thought that's what we were talking about, the acceptance of late work all the way up until completion of the school year. I find it funny that, actually not funny, aggravating that, teachers will get called out if we try and fail a teacher for their performance, but they're willing to fail a student. I find that appalling.
Dr. Gatondo, when are the grades due for middle and high school?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
When are the grades final for middle and high school?
So usually the teachers turn them in the last day of school.
Oh, okay. So the 12th, right?
Yeah, you know, if people need, if they have something that comes up or whatever, you know, so we always work with teachers, or the site will work with their teachers. But generally their last day of work is the 12th. So I have the number of students who are seniors that got interims, and that's 208.
And is it an interim? Could that be, that doesn't have to be an F, right? You can get an interim.
I filtered for Fs. So
you did, okay.
Yeah, so we
didn't filter for Ds and Cs and Cs if you're
I took out all of the other grades. So we're just talking about fail grades.
Okay.
And how mmany of those were at 313?
So this is the interims, not the 313.
Right. So can you do the same thing on? Okay. Thank you.
313 won't be as bad because all these are worse later.
As one of the parents said, I was kind of trained, this way too. So I look at the numbers.
Right.
But I do want to, let me just, I do think what Suzanne said is true, that, we did discuss this at length last meeting, and there's no way that we're going to make everybody happy, right? There's always going to be some people that disagree with us. On a scale of 1 to 10, there's going to be some people that disagree with us with a 10, and there's some people that are going to be, somewhere in the 5 and some that are 1s. But it's impossible to make everybody happy, and I do think that there's hard choices. I'm a little distressed by these numbers because, in my experience in the district, you kind of had to work at getting an F, right? I do think our teachers do not take failing kids lightly. I don't think any of our teachers take pleasure in failing kids. I think our teachers really want our kids to succeed. And to me, getting an F for the kid is also an F, to that teacher to some extent, because our teachers are supposed to, find ways to engage our kids and help them learn. So I think it's a reflection on all of us, including the board, when there are, a large number of Fs. And so I think we need to think about that potentially separately if it's at this level. But, we never in our discussion previously talked about eliminating Fs as a possibility. That was something that LA Unified did do, and I'm proud to say that we're not LA Unified. I don't think people in Palos Verdes want to be LA Unified, and they chose to live in a district like ours as opposed to LA Unified. And so I don't think a no F policy helps anyone, because all that does is that, disincentivize teachers and kids potentially, and we're passing on kids then who haven't, learned what they need to learn to the next level, and that's really not something that's in the kids' best interest.
I have the number for you.
Okay.
Okay, so 155 were Fs for seniors at the third quarter, and 208 at the interim period. So on the attachment of the resolution, there were highlights that basically allow the board to kind of go through some of the things that there wasn't consensus on. And so I think if you want to kind of work through those things, it'll kind of help, the discussion. Ms. Crawford, did you have a question?
Yes, sorry, we just got one more comment in about this, and their question is, which is a good question, is can you calculate how many A students have dropped to become a C or worse during this time?
So I do not have all that data right now, but I can do that at some point. But yeah, I can tell you that there is an increase in between seniors based on this, or I can look at other grade levels.
Right.
It seems like due to your data that you referenced. So at least I just wanted that person to be able to have that question answered.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to mention that, so in Manhattan Beach, I pulled their policy up, and you can, a student cannot get an F if they have all these different issues, that we talked about, with distance learning and such. El Segundo's policy does allow for no Fs. Theirs was very straightforward, their policy. So there's lots of policies that have changed. I also know of school districts that have actually eliminated requirements to graduate. So districts do not want students to not graduate from high school this year because of different, issues in parents' households. So they've eliminated, units required to graduate. So school districts are doing all different kinds of things to make sure their students are not harmed because they are negatively impacted in some way because of the COVID crisis. And it doesn't have to be that you're sick. It could be just your life's in turmoil. It could be a lot of different things. So I don't think this point in time is like any other we've had, where we have to be very concerned about the mental health of our kids today, what they're able to do, and what's going to happen between now and June, and then how we are going to accommodate kids making up those units and those classes to go forward if they're not a senior, and what will happen if it actually keeps them from graduating. The vast majority, we have a great graduation rate every single year. I didn't ask Lindsay this, but I know at least a couple of years ago, we would have a handful of kids in the summer working to finish units. So we have Rancho Del Mar, we have a few kids over the summer that finish units. So every child in our district graduates. So I am all about allowing children to get through the school year with an F if we need to, if it means they weren't going to graduate, because they wouldn't be in this situation if we weren't in the situation that our entire country is in, that you could say we have not handled well as a country. So the fact that yesterday we as a county talked about, staying in our homes till August, every time we do these things, it negatively impacts our kids who are not able to live a normal lifestyle and to do what they would normally do, go to school and learn and have any kind of hope for what's going to happen in the future. So I was really happy that Lindsay put together a lot of different options for us so we can look at all the different ways we can make this work for 5 of us to come to some kind of consensus, so that we do the least amount of damage to our kids that have had virtually no way around the obstacles that they are encountering. And I don't know how many people you guys have talked to, parents, but I have spoken to many parents who I do not know, whose kids I do not know, who have shared very personal stories about the struggles that they are going through, that I don't know how honest they are necessarily with their teachers, because some people really can't even wrap their hands around how hard this has been to get through, from kids sleeping 22 hours a day to being up all night and, kids moving out of their own parents' houses and into other people's houses. There's just a lot of chaos everywhere. And so I'm hoping that amongst ourselves, we can find it to be very compassionate to all of our kids, and help them get through the year, knowing that this is nobody's normal behavior. So would anybody else like to?
Yes. Yeah. When we discussed keeping letter grades and, adding the pass fail or, pass credit, no credit, it was with the understanding that the teachers, they assured us that they were going to be compassionate, that it was going to be compassionate grading with understanding. And if teachers are not accepting late work during this pandemic, I am no longer in favor of keeping grades or, pass fail. I would actually recommend going to a no harm grading system. Again, if I thought the teachers were doing everything they could to help students, but Lindsay, you just said that, some teachers aren't accepting late work. And to me, that is unforgivable.
Actually, I said that, not Lindsay, but
I'm sorry.
Just for the record.
Sorry, Lindsay.
I only know that because I read all the spreadsheets of all the teachers from all the schools to see what they were doing, when we got that data last week.
Right.
And a lot of them put on there in their column, we'll accept work only 3 days or 24 hours later. And I thought, wow, I thought we were having all of our teachers accept late work until the end of the school year.
That
was my understanding.
That was my understanding. So at this point, I would move towards a no harm grading policy.
I know a no harm grading for the March 13th date. Is that what you mean?
For March 13th. I think that students by now, it's now May 15th.
Right.
And they've had the threat of grades over their head for long enough now that the students are going to continue. If they drop off the last few weeks, so be it. I don't want to see a single student hurt. I don't want a single student stress. I've seen it with my own children. It's not necessarily your own child who is struggling. It might be a friend of theirs, but then that takes their mind completely away to their friends' struggles. So I'm sorry, this resolution is beautiful, but I would have to only support a no harm grading policy.
Okay, Megan.
So I have one more public comment, and then I'll say my viewpoint, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
This is from Stephanie Makishima. They said grading policy. Oh, they're talking about the grading policy. I'm sorry I missed the decision about grading policy, but I just want to comment that my daughter's college is giving students the choice of either letter grades or credit/no credit. This seems the most fair. Also, I just want to make sure that if the teacher said at the beginning of the school year that AP test scores can raise grades, that policy is kept intact. Thank you. Okay, so for my viewpoint, so I'm Lindsay suggested, so looking at the highlights of things that we can discuss. First, the date that is highlighted of June 5th, that is a week before school ends. I thought that grades might be due before the last day of school, and I thought that students would have a grade before deciding, but it sounds like that's not the case if there's a lot of late stuff that teachers are putting in. So I would suggest to move that date to the last day of school of June 12th, just because I think it is fair for students to have their final grade and then make the ultimate decision of pass or credit or whatever it may be.
Sorry, just to clarify, so usually teachers put their grades in, but then there's also some lag time because they have to go through and make sure that everybody's are in and uploaded appropriately. Mm-hmm. So the 12th doesn't necessarily mean that students and parents can see their grades.
So when is the date where they actually see their grades? Is it not until summer then?
Yeah, it's usually a couple of weeks after.
So is it possible, how hard is that for them to see their grades and then staff to go into the summer, or for them to fill out that paperwork to then decide? I just hate them choosing before they actually see the final grade.
We do have 12-month employees, and then obviously our principals, our administrators are working. So we do have some employees that are 12-month employees. Obviously those are the ones who are also kind of chasing down some of the, grades that may have not been submitted or whatever it might be, or if there's an issue technology wise or whatever it might be. So, I think if we went into August, that would be really bad. But I think we could come up with something.
Manhattan Beach is August 1.
Mm.
Their policy they adopted is August 1.
For my position on the date, whatever date that is where students can see their grades, even if that's in the summertime, for them to make that choice. I think that's what's best for students as far as the date goes. Elementary, I think that we all had consensus last time on the standards-based grading. I think that's fine because for my opinion, because I think it's good for parents to be able to see where their child is successful and where they may need to improve in the summer. So that leaves the middle school and high school. So for me, I think the difference between the F and the no credit is that the F, at least on here, affects the GPA and the no credit does not. And so even though they're both essentially failing the course and not getting credit, I wouldn't want them to be harmed by, I wouldn't want their GPA harmed by this. I was looking at the credit option. obviously that would be the easiest, but I don't think it's possible to give students credit if they literally did not have any knowledge of the course to be able to move on to the next level. So I'm thinking of math, I'm thinking